Welcome back to part 2 of ex15 Database Display, and what we'll do in this part is add some CSS to make our table look nice in our front end web page. So what can we do to make it look nice, to make it look more like this? We could put a little margin around it. We can put a little margin right or padding right on this. We can get rid of some of the line. If there's any outlines that show up in a table, we could do that. We could even do alternate colors. And we could do like nth child even. Now why even, even though that starts at 1? Because this is our first row. We could do the even rows and make them a different color and do like a light blue or light green or light pink or something like that if you want. And we could certainly put more space around these. So let's go and do a little bit of that. Now before we do that, we're going to have to go back and do something called URL4. That's not going to be in here, so we could go back to our index page and in our templates, and we can open up index, and we're going to do something called URL4. And what we're going to do is we're going to do it in the ref part, because we're not going to do this style.css right now. Matter of fact, we don't even have a file yet. So we can just wipe this out and put double curly braces. And then what we'll do is put in this, we'll put in a space, and we'll put this URL4 function, and then we're going to put arguments in here. And I believe the first argument is going to be in single quotes, static, since we're enclosed in double quotes. We're going to be static. And static is talking about the folder that we're in. So we're going to use that for the folder because we have to put our CSS in a static folder. Just like we had to put our HTML pages in our templates folder, we're going to put something in static or CSS in there. JavaScript would be in there as well. And then I'm going to put a comma, and I'm going to put file name equals, and in single quotes, I'm going to put styles.css. And we'll make sure we call it styles because that's what I usually like to do. And I think I have that right. We still have rel equals style sheet, type equals text CSS, and we just have to do what? We have to uncomment it. So I could just get rid of these things here. That may be safer. Get rid of the comment tags at the end. And again, for the href, everything's in quotes in the href. And we have double curly braces on either side. And then we have this URL4 function. It has 2 arguments, static in quotes, and then file name equals styles.css in quotes, and I see that I'm missing a single quote here, so I'm glad I went through it again. So that's what we need here. Now we have to put styles in our static folder. So let's save this, and let's go to our CSC 235 and static. Now we don't have anything in here. Let's create a new file. And what are we going to call it? Of course, we'll call it styles.css, and we'll make a new file. And we'll do some CSS in here. What could we do first? Well, let's just do a couple basic things. Let's go body, and we'll just do margin, and we'll put a nice margin around everything. And we'll do like 2em. We don't have a lot of information. We'll do 2em margin. And let's just save it. And let's see if it works. Now, we shouldn't have to reload this. Although we did adjust the HTML page, but when we do CSS, we shouldn't have to reload this. But let's just refresh. And we got an internal error. Okay, we may have to reload this. So let's go back. Styles.css is saved in our static folder. And let's just go back to our index, which is in our template. Let's make sure this looks okay. And everything looks okay here, and we saved it. And let's go back to our Python file, which is Flask app. And let's just put this back the way it was, and let's just see all the characters. So let's save that. And let me just look at my files again, just to make sure I didn't. Static, templates, just want to make sure everything's okay. And then I'll go back here, and I'll just reload this. And let's see if this updates with a margin. And it did. There's our margin. So we have margin around this right now. What we'd like to do is put some space after all of these THs and TDs. And then we can alternate colors. We could do lots of different stuff. And let's try to put space, like margin right or padding right, next to all the THs first. So we'll go back to our files over here and into static and open up our CSS. And we'll target TH and we'll put margin right. We'll just see how this works. If margin doesn't work, then we'll try padding. And we'll try 2M, see how that works. And I'll save it. Now I think when we do this, we don't have to keep updating. So let's go here and refresh. And nothing happened. Margin right. Let me try padding. I did it before and padding worked fine. So let me just try padding. I'm not sure why that would be a big difference, but let's do padding and save it and refresh. So padding works. I'm not sure why it's doing padding. Did I do padding right? No, I didn't. This should be padding right. So it's doing padding all around. Let me go here and padding right is what I want. And we'll see if 2M looks okay. Let me save it. Let me refresh it. And that's not bad. That looks okay. And we could do a little bit more. You could try 3. Spread it out just a little bit more. So I'm just doing 3. And you could do rem as well, which is root. But I'll leave it at M right now. I'll save. Remember, you still have to save, but then you could just refresh. We don't have to reload. So that looks pretty good. And what we'd like to do is color all these even rows here. So what would we target? We would target the THs, and they would be the even rows. So that's actually something called nth child. And you can look it up quick, but I'll just show you this. You can look it up in W3 Schools when you're targeting those things, nth child. You could even go here and just go W3 Schools nth child and just look it up and see what comes up. Nth child selector. Because you could select certain children, you could also select even. We want to select even so that it alternates. And here it is. This is what you want to use. Actually, this code is perfect because it's nth child even, because we want to start at the second one, not the heading. Although you could always do the heading differently. But we want to do nth child even, and we want to change the background to a light color. So that could be perfect. So let's try this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to highlight that and copy it. And come back here, and we'll try that. Now, it's not going to be P, it's going to be TD. So we have to change that. So it's the table data cells. And I'm not sure if that matters because the first one is a TH. Let's see what happens here. TD, nth child even, and we'll do light green. We'll see what happens there. We could always choose another color. And again, I'll save. And I'll go here and refresh. And that's using TD. Oh, we're not using TD. This is doing cells. We don't want TD. You should have said something. We want TR. We want the rows, the table rows. So that's why I didn't have to worry about the TH or not, because it'll treat everything as rows. Because remember, this was the first row, and then we had TDs in the next row. So let's save that. Let's make it TD. See how that looks. Saved it. Come back here, refresh. There we go. Now we have this little border in here. Now we could put some padding on the cells, and we also have this little border in here that we can collapse the border. I think it's table border collapse. You can't just put border none, so I had to look that up. But we can use this in here. So that doesn't look too bad. So let's put a little padding on our cells. So they would be TD. So we could go here and do TD. And just put a little padding, just a little bit. We'll put padding all around, and I'll just do like 0.5 M, see what that looks like. And while I'm here, I'll do something called table. And I had to look this up, so it's not that I'm a genius or anything, but it was border collapse. I had to look up how to collapse the border on a table. Border collapse, and the property is collapse, not yes or true or anything, collapse. So it was border collapse. That's what did it. Border none or border 0, none of that worked for table. So that worked, at least when I tried it before, from my sample that you could see. And let's see how this looks. Save it. And notice there is an asterisk here when it's not saved. It also says unsaved changes here. And let's refresh it. And that looks pretty good. We could put a table around the whole thing, but this is really what we want right now. So we're going to kind of cut our losses and stop here with ex15 with doing this, with a little bit of CSS. And just to review, we made a CSS file. It's in a static folder. We had to do padding right. I'm not sure why margin right didn't work, why that's an issue, but padding right worked just fine. Probably has something to do with a table because they can't put margin inside a table, I'm guessing. I don't work with tables a whole lot, so it's probably just inside there is what it's able to do, and it's not able to put things outside of the table header. I'm assuming that's the reason. So hopefully that answered the question as I was thinking about it. So we had this file, and it's in static. And in order to connect to this, we had to go here, and I think everything's saved. We had to go into our templates, and we used the same index.html, and we just had to do this little kind of adjustment to our href. So instead of just pointing to styles.css or static/styles.css, we had to do URL4. This is a place for all the static files that you can use on your website in here. So if you have JavaScript or any other files in there, you could use those. I'm assuming images would be in there as well. I haven't done a whole lot with Flask, but I'm assuming images could go in there too. So if you had a table cell and you had little pictures of the characters or something, you could put them in there. And again, they're using these double curly brace characters here to indicate that it's a variable, and it's actually a function that has two arguments, static, and then the file name equals that. So that's what's doing that. Everything else is the same as you'd normally have with CSS, and that's all we had to do. And then basically we had a table structure here, and we had one row that has the headings, one row that basically has variables holding what's going to go in there in each table cell, and they're basically pulling the index number of each item as it goes through the database. So for each kind of row in the database, it's taking the 0 index, the 1 index, the 2 index, the 3, 4, 5, and it's going across. So for each record we have in our database, it's showing that information, and it's in a loop. So this starts the loop, this ends the loop. That actually was pretty easy. It didn't take a lot of time. So no matter how many we have, we can put them in there. Now, if we only displayed certain columns, I'm not sure if they'd be empty or not. We could explore that a little bit, but that's more of a database issue. I don't know if we have to focus on that. Like I said, I'd rather focus on creating some kind of front end to add records to our database if we can. I think that would be cool. I'm not sure if we have enough time to do that, but we're going to try. So that's all we did here with our index page, and our index page only varied from the other one by just not using this stuff. So that's what we did here, and I think I put some spaces in here, so I'll save it. And then going back to our CSE 235 folder, our Flask app, again, not a lot of stuff in here. All we did was outside of a function, we just kind of set up our MyDB. We set up our connector driver here, and it's using the connect function, and it has all our information. And then inside a function, it's actually creating a cursor object, an instance of a cursor object, and then it's executing a query. Execute actually executes queries from a SQL database, and then what comes from that is another variable called results, which is the fetch all, which basically goes through and gets all the rows from that query. So all the row fetch all is kind of the rows from all that query. You could look up all that stuff. I could show you where some of this stuff is. And then the final thing we have to put in here that we didn't have when we used the command line was we have to just render the template, the index.html page, and we have to send any variables that we need. And the only variable that we have to send is results. And then we're using results in that loop that's in that index file. So that's the way it showed up, and then it ended up looking like this. You could certainly change colors or do anything else or whatever you want to do. You could start bringing in bootstrap stuff and all that like they were doing on the other one. But for right now, for ex15, this is pretty good for now. So we'll stop here with ex15, and what we'll do is try to see if we can do something where we create a form and can add information into a form, add a first name, last name, species, add new characters and add them, and then have them show up on our page. Now, we did that with MySQL using GORM and PHP. I've never done that with Flask, but we'll give it a shot for our final assignment in here, unless I come up with something else that we can do with WordPress or something like that. So this is our ex15. This is our front end and back end of working with Flask and working with a MySQL database. When you're done, all you have to do is just indicate in your ex15 that you're finished. And you could always put your username. That way I could find it easier. And I haven't seen a whole lot of people indicate me as their teacher yet. So once you indicate me as your teacher, I will see an email of that. So make sure that you do that, and I'll see that stuff start to populate. And then I'll see a little list when I go into my Python Anywhere account for home and WCCC, and I could go see all your stuff. So if you have any problems, you have any issues with the database, with PHP-MyAdmin, anything like that, just let me know and I could go in there. But make sure you indicate me in Python Anywhere as your instructor. And again, where that was under account, and it was under education, and then you put home of WCCC, and I get an email saying that you've joined as one of my students, and then I could get in there when I'm in home of WCCC and see all your accounts. So that's all you have to do for ex15.